Let's begin. On the morning the photos dropped, everything about the entertainment industry changed. The images appeared without warning. A grainy snapshot of Freen walking along a quiet riverside path with someone who was clearly not Becky. A second image captured them entering a restaurant. A third showed their silhouettes in a parked car. Nothing explicit, nothing romantic, but enough to send the internet into a complete meltdown. Within minutes, hashtags exploded. Fans demanded answers. Anti-fans stirred chaos. Supporters tried to calm the storm. But the louder the noise grew, the more silent Becky became, and that silence became its own force. People weren't just reacting to the possible date. They were reacting to Becky's refusal to comment. Her silence was louder than a statement, and everyone wanted to know what it meant. Meanwhile, Freen's name climbed every trending chart in Asia. The restaurant owner denied knowing anything. The photographer refused to reveal details, and Freen's agency simply stated they were looking into the matter. It was the kind of vague response that only added gasoline to the fire. Back in her apartment, Becky watched everything unfold in real time. She wasn't angry. She wasn't shocked. What bothered her was the narrative that fans were creating. They claimed she was heartbroken. They claimed she was betrayed. They claimed Freen had moved on without telling her. None of it was true. What people didn't know was that the night before the scandal broke, Becky and Freen had spoken on the phone for over 2 hours. Their conversation was calm, soft, honest. They talked about work, about life, about how the pressure was changing. Becky even knew Freen had a dinner meeting that night, but she didn't know the meeting would get photographed and presented as a secret date. Only industry insiders knew the truth. The person Freen was with was a producer negotiating a new project, someone who had specifically asked for privacy. But the internet never waits for information. It chooses the story that hurts the most. As hours passed, Becky still refused to release a statement, and her silence pushed fans into deeper speculation. But this time, Becky made a decision that changed the tone of everything. Instead of addressing the rumor directly, she posted a short message on her private story. A simple sentence. Calm, grounded, powerful. Not everything you see is what it seems. Her words spread instantly. Screenshots circulated like wildfire. Some fans interpreted it as support. Others read it as disappointment. But those closest to the truth understood. Becky was protecting something bigger than a rumor. She was protecting Freen. Behind the scenes, Freen felt overwhelmed, tired, exhausted by the assumptions. She hadn't expected the meeting to turn into a scandal. But Becky's quiet message gave her strength. And for the first time since the photos dropped, Freen reached out. "Are you okay?" she texted Becky. Becky replied instantly. "I'm fine. Just focus on your work. Let them talk. We know the truth." It was a message that steadied Freen, reminded her of the bond that remained unbroken. Even in silence, even in chaos, Becky stood firmly on her side. It wasn't loud. It wasn't public. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. Later that evening, another photo leaked. A behind-the-scenes image from last month. Freen and Becky smiling together on set, unaware someone had taken the picture. Fans immediately noticed something. The way Freen leaned slightly toward Becky. The way Becky's eyes softened toward Freen. The unspoken closeness. People changed their tone. The narrative shifted. Suddenly, instead of accusing Freen of betraying Becky, fans started wondering if the two were simply going through something privately. Something they didn't owe the world an explanation for. Some started to apologize for the harsh comments. But Becky still chose silence. Because silence was her message. Silence was her boundary. Silence was her way of saying, "Don't pull me into something that isn't true." And Freen understood that better than anyone. What no one knew yet was that Becky and Freen were planning something quietly. A joint project. A new phase of their partnership. Something that would soon prove that their bond was far from broken. That this so-called scandal was nothing but noise. And when the world finally sees what they're preparing, everything about this story will flip again. The longer the story circulated online, the more the pressure shifted onto Freen. Every hour brought a new wave of reactions. Some fans defended her fiercely, others questioned her choices, and a few demanded she clear things up. But Freen stayed silent, Not because she was hiding the truth, but because she didn't want to drag Becky into a narrative that was built on misunderstanding. Inside her agency's meeting room, Freen sat opposite her management team, listening as they debated strategies. Some wanted her to release a formal statement. Some suggested posting a photo with Becky. Others recommended ignoring everything until the chaos died down. But Freen knew something they didn't. Becky hated dramatics. Becky hated fake clarity. And Becky hated being used as a shield for media damage control. So Freen quietly ended the discussion with one sentence. I will wait for Becky. That single line caught everyone off guard. Not because it was emotional, but because it was the truth. She trusted Becky's pace. She trusted Becky's process. And Freen wasn't going to let the noise force either of them into decisions they weren't ready for. Meanwhile, Becky was sitting on her balcony, watching the city lights flicker as the public debate continued. She knew she could end this story in 10 seconds with a single statement. She could confirm it was just a business meeting. She could tell fans to calm down. She could protect Freen and stop the chaos. But she didn't, because she understood something deeper. This wasn't about the photos. It wasn't even about her. It was about the industry trying to control the narrative of two women who were finally building their careers on their own terms. The more Becky thought about it, the clearer it became that staying silent wasn't avoidance. It was resistance. Then, around midnight, her phone buzzed. A message from Freen. They're pushing again. Tell me what you want me to do. Becky stared at the screen for a moment before replying. Do nothing. We move only when we're ready, not when they demand it. Freen responded almost immediately. Okay, I trust you. It was a simple conversation, but it carried a weight that only the two of them understood. A reminder that, even in chaos, their foundation was built on trust. But outside their private world, the situation intensified. A gossip page claimed to have more photos. Another insisted Becky was secretly heartbroken. A third page insisted Freen and the producer were dating casually. None of it was true, but the headlines were designed to go viral. As the noise grew louder, Becky's team suggested she temporarily restrict her comments. She refused. She didn't want to look like she was hiding. She didn't want fans to feel shut out. Instead, she quietly posted a photo of her desk, a script, and a coffee cup. No caption. No explanation. The internet exploded again. People dissected every pixel. Was she focused on work? Was she ignoring the scandal? Was she sending a message to Freen? Analysts, gossip bloggers, and even fans began projecting their theories onto the photo. But the truth was simple. Becky wasn't trying to say anything. She was living her life. The next day, everything shifted. A new set of leaked images began circulating. This time, they weren't scandalous. They were soft, gentle, intimate in a way that wasn't romantic but undeniably close. Freen and Becky at a fitting room weeks ago. Freen fixing the collar of Becky's outfit. Becky laughing with her head tilted back. Freen watching her with quiet warmth. Fans zoomed in. They replayed scenes. They compared them to past moments. And suddenly, the narrative turned. People began defending them again. Supporters argued the photos proved they were still close. Others noted Becky looked comfortable, not heartbroken. New hashtags emerged, shifting the energy from chaos to curiosity. Then, unexpectedly, Freen broke her silence. Not with a long statement, not with a press conference, but with a short, precise post on her private story. Respect the people who matter. The moment it hit social media, the entire tone shifted once again. Some fans took it as a message for Becky. Others believed she was addressing the rumor spreaders. But the truth sat quietly between the lines. Freen wasn't defending herself. She was defending someone else. Becky saw the post within seconds. And for the first time since the scandal began, she felt the weight lift a little. Later that evening, the two finally met in person for the first time since the photos dropped. They slipped into a quiet cafe they often used as a hideaway. No cameras, no noise, just the two of them. Freen looked tired but relieved. Becky looked calm but thoughtful. The first thing Freen said was, I didn't want you to get dragged into this. And Becky replied, you didn't drag me. They did. There's a difference. They talked for nearly 3 hours. About work. about the new project, about how much everything had changed since they left their agency, and finally, about the scandal. Becky clarified she wasn't upset. Freen explained the producer meeting. They both agreed that fans would eventually understand. Then Becky said something that Freen didn't expect. Maybe we should show them. Not with words, with actions. What kind of actions? Freen asked. Becky smiled. Let's announce the project ourselves. Together. It wasn't just a plan. It was a statement. One that said they were still partners. Still connected. Still walking forward, not backward. Not broken. Not divided. And when the announcement drops, the same internet that tried to tear them apart will watch them rise again, this time on their own terms. If you want, I can continue with the announcement moment next.